All right, welcome to another episode of the Coffee Break Podcast, where our mission here is to share business ideas, practices, and strategies while we enjoy our coffee. Today is an exciting episode for us. We have a special guest on with us today, Dean Drako. He is an entrepreneur, however you want to classify him, a serial entrepreneur, maybe a parallel entrepreneur, but he's an entrepreneur. And we're going to have a really cool conversation with him today to get more insights on kind of behind the scenes of what it's like to start different businesses. That's going to be the main topic of discussion today on the podcast. And we'll be right back after this.
We got so much to say. We got a podcast to make. We're sipping on lattes, and it's time for a coffee break. It's time for a coffee break. Oh, yeah.
All right, welcome back, Dean. Thank you very much for being here today. I know you are a very busy man, and we appreciate any time that we can get with you. So thank you very much for joining us on the phone today.
My pleasure to be here, Chad.
So I wanted to jump in. One of the things that we do on the podcast every week is we have a segment called Rapid Fire. It's 5 randomly selected questions with unknown point values just to kind of get under your skin and to get to know you a little better. So are you game?
I'm game.
All right, here we go. Number 1, if you had 1 extra hour in your day that you could do anything with, what would you choose?
Ooh. I generally gravitate towards doing product design. I love kind of figuring out how to make products better, faster, stronger, and easier to use for people.
So if you had an extra hour in your day, you would just work more.
I guess so.
All right, number 2, what new ideas are giving you energy lately?
The latest ideas are around the use of AI and technology to increase the use of video. I believe that video of everything and anything is going to make its way to the cloud, and that there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of technology development that can be used to analyze that video to help people run their businesses better, to provide better customer service, and do all kinds of interesting things.
All right, so AI. Number 3, thought this would be a fun one. What sports did you play as a kid?
My favorite sport was post-college when I picked up learning and playing ultimate frisbee quite extensively. The great thing about ultimate frisbee is it's a very inexpensive sport. You only need a $4 frisbee in a field.
There you go. Yes, that sounds like a lot of fun. All right. Number 4, what was your first job and what did you like or dislike about it?
Wow. So my first summer job was designing electronics for Ford Motor Company. My first real job was in high school. I started a software company writing a bulletin board system and selling it for the Apple II computer.
I mean, that's not too shabby for your first job. So what did you like or dislike about it?
I love the entrepreneurial aspect of the software company. I was doing marketing. I took out magazine ads. I had to do a manual. I had to do packaging. I had to do customer support. I had to figure out pricing, everything around, kind of getting a little company. My first job with Ford Motor was fun and exciting because I was doing stuff that, actually went into a car and was shipped to, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of customers across the world.
Awesome. All right, last question on the rapid fire. What was the most defining moment of your life so far?
Wow. I would say the most defining moment of my life was when I concluded that I was not going to work for anyone ever again. Yeah.
That's powerful, and it sets up a really good conversation for today. So thank you very much for participating in Rapid Fire. You have a score of 864, so that's a pretty good score.
All right, thank you. I have no idea what that means, but it sounds great.
It's unknown point values. We just make up the score every time. But you did really good. We appreciate your participation. I wanted to, so again, kind of getting into the conversation today. It's like, okay, when you have an opportunity to sit down with an entrepreneur that has had the experience that you have had, what are the questions that you want to ask to pick your brain? And so just really wanted to dive into some of that kind of behind the scenes stuff of how you kind of see the world and how you're making decisions on a daily basis. Cause I think that's really, in the business world as a small business leader, it's something that you want to kind of learn from those that have been down that path. I was reading an interesting stat the other day, and I also heard you mention something about on average it takes an entrepreneur 2.5 times starting businesses to actually get some success. But the stat said 20% of new businesses fail during the first year, and nearly 50% fail by the 5th year. What are your thoughts on that, and how do you kind of see that? What is a reason for that?
So I believe that being an entrepreneur is being adaptable. And so the idea that you have or the problem you may be setting out to solve may not always turn out to be a problem and the solution that you're providing that the customer is really willing to pay for. And so you have to adapt. And I think the statistic I was quoting is that the average startup company in tech is successful on business plan 2.5.
Yeah.
So the first one doesn't quite work, and the second one you can almost get there on the second one. The statistic that I think you're quoting about small business involves all of the small businesses, even those that are not tech, which includes, dry cleaners and restaurants and stuff. And I think that a large portion of them fail because running a business is very different than cooking, and running a business is very different than doing the task. And a lot of people go into the business and aren't necessarily ready to deal with the decisions of hiring and firing people and negotiating payments and making sure customers pay them and chasing down contracts. And so I think a lot of them can struggle with that, and watching the numbers closely and making sure that you're bringing in more money than you're spending is pretty important.
So I think would you say it's more so that they get caught up in or get too attached to the idea and they don't actually get lost in kind of the actual business component of it?
Correct. There's this balance that an entrepreneur has to have of dogged attach to execution and success and the idea, and not giving up on the good idea too easily. However, there's also this adaptability that's necessary. If you start a restaurant that's selling, tofu burgers and, people love them, but the audience isn't quite large enough, and you say, okay, well, we're going to add regular burgers to the menu and expand our business because then we can stay in business. That's a compromise that's very business practical. If you're unwilling to be business practical, you may not be able to stay in business with a narrow business. No offense to vegetarians in any way, shape, or form, probably not the best example. It goes in tech as well. If you're building a product that has a narrow audience, you could end up not having enough business to drive your business. And so you sometimes have to adapt and, do a slightly different business than you originally intended.
So that kind of leads into another question that I had for you down the line. But when you're running a business and you come up with this kind of a new idea, so what you're talking about is what I'm hearing you say is that you're talking about adapting. So adapting to that process or adapting to changes in that business environment. What about if you have a business that is operating, so it's kind of and you know what that core business is, but new ideas spur outside of that. How do you see that happening when basically it's an entire new business idea that is erupted out of the core business? How do you maintain that core business while also starting something new or trying to develop something new?
That's very challenging. And I can, give you some practical examples and some, less practical examples. In the Eagle Eye video surveillance business, I started a business that was basically moving video surveillance to the cloud. I felt that no one was really addressing the market of moving video surveillance to the cloud. I thought there was a big opportunity to be the market leader and move video surveillance to the cloud. what's happening is in the video surveillance, the video security business, AI and business intelligence, i.e. analyzing the video to help you run the business, as well as AI to detect security issues or attacks or guns or what are becoming very big kind of other businesses that rely on the core video surveillance business. So Eagle Eye has expanded our business via partnership with a large number of other companies that are integrating their technology onto our platform so that they can offer it. Eagle Eye is not focused heavily on developing our own AI technology because we think that the technology is very young and there's a lot of technology development, and the customers that we're servicing are going to want a broad selection of it. And so we're doing a tremendous amount of partnering to make that possible. On the flip side, another example was when we launched Eagle Eye Networks 5 or 6 years ago, we were doing only cloud-based video surveillance. So all of the video had to go to the cloud. And when we would roll out to a customer who had 10 locations, it was great at 9 locations. But the 10th location, they could not get enough bandwidth to get all the video to the cloud. So we had to quickly adapt our product and make it into a mixed mode product, which would allow all the video to be sent to the cloud for 9 of those sites, but at the 10th site, record the video locally and then only send some of the video to the cloud based on the bandwidth limitations. And so we had to kind of quickly adapt the product in order to do that, in order to keep the customers happy and to keep the business going.
That's very interesting. I know we had a couple of episodes ago talked with an agile coach, and it seems like that is very much the process that Eagle Eye works under. Is very much that agile philosophy of getting it out there, testing it, see how it works and how it benefits, and then adjust accordingly. And that's almost exactly the process that you just described.
Yes, I'm a very a big fan of agile development process for software, but also agile operation of the company in general. I believe that the customer is the most brilliant resource you have, and that once you start to get a handful of customers, they are incredibly valuable because they will tell you, if you listen to them and you talk to them and you engage them, they will tell you what you need to be doing to be even more successful in your business. And they will gladly tell you.
So I want to shift gears just a little bit. I know one of the probably more recognized businesses that you started and then I guess eventually sold off was Barracuda Networks. I remember the name Barracuda Networks many years ago from listening to Rush Limbaugh on the radio and hearing the advertisements on there. But just a reminder, you're listening to the Coffee Break Podcast. Also, we wanted to let you know that our team puts together a weekly blog post. You can find it at locdoc.net/blog. It's guaranteed to raise your IQ by 12 points or your money back. So it's pretty much a win-win. All right, back to the conversation. I don't want to dive too much into Barracuda Networks as a whole, but I wanted to understand some of the lessons that you learned from that business, getting that thing started and then eventually selling it off, that you have then applied to future ventures that you've started.
Wow. Okay. So most of my companies that I have started, almost all, have been started based on solving a problem that I personally had.
Okay.
So my first company, which designed software for making semiconductor circuits more quickly and more efficiently, was a problem I had when I was working designing chips for Apple Computer. I was frustrated with the software, so I left and trained the company to make better software to make computer chips. Barracuda Networks, I started at a time when spam had just gone through the roof. Like it had skyrocketed in the 6 or 9 months before I started Barracuda, where your email box was getting hundreds of emails a day, and only 3 or 4 of them were actually ones that were supposed to be sent to you. It was just ads and spam for everything. And everyone's email box was being overwhelmed, including mine. And I'm like, I know how to solve this problem. I'm going to make a box that, just self-maintaining, connected to the cloud, and it just filters out all of this bad stuff so that nobody else has to see it. And so what I found, one of the lessons I've learned, is that the problems I'm having are usually problems that other people are having.
Okay.
And that, translating those problems and solving those problems will eventually lead to a company or a market or a solution that is that will work as a company. Eagle Eye Networks, which is my cloud-based video surveillance company, was born out of a problem I had at Barracuda Networks. At Barracuda Networks, I opened up offices around the world. I was extremely obsessed about giving great customer service. I wanted to make sure that my salespeople and support people were in the office in every country I operated in order to answer the phone in the local language and the local dialect. I said, hey, I'll just put a security camera in each office and just make sure that people show up on time and, leave on when they're supposed to, so that we're answering the phone. And I found that almost impossible to do because there was no cloud-based video surveillance system that would let me put cameras in 10 offices around the world. And I'm like, I can't be the only person that wants to do this. And so I started working on the problem of cloud-based video surveillance and easy-to-use video surveillance, hence the birth of Eagle Eye Network.
So it's all based off of just understanding the need and then putting a game plan into action to actually solve that need. Question for you.
And generalizing that need to, a general other people's, requirements or whatnot.
So, but it basically poses the understanding that there is a business need for this, because I see this. I'm talking to other people validating it. Well, now I can go put a business plan together to actually make it happen.
Exactly. And I'll talk about a mistake I made in the first company.
Okay.
That I started in to do the semiconductor design software. I was, relatively young, and I'm designing these semiconductor chips at Apple. They're going to go make the next Macintosh, and the tools are awkward and clumsy and slow. And I'm like, I can make a better tool than this. And I went out and asked a bunch of people, should I make this tool? Should I start a business around this? And they all said, oh, that's going to be really hard. The market's small. Going into business for yourself is challenging. And they were just all kind of a lot of negative naysayer energy. Mm-hmm. And so I delayed. I did not do it for like a year. And that was an extremely large mistake. I should have gone for it right away, because I lost a year in the marketplace that otherwise would have given me a much stronger advantage than I had when I did enter the market. So don't listen to the naysayers if you actually think you got a good product idea.
Very, very valid point. Follow-up question to that. At what point did you know or consider yourself an entrepreneur?
I considered myself an entrepreneur. I would say really confidently after I sold my first company.
Okay.
The semiconductor software design company I sold, and very successfully, and I considered myself an entrepreneur. Maybe a little bit before that, 3 or 4 years before that, when I was running that, and it was reasonably successful. That's when I would say so.
So then, with that understanding, because you're very engineering focused, and I mean, you said in the rapid fire section you would much prefer to spend time on product development. How has it been adjusting? And maybe this is something that is a continual thing, but adjusting from the engineering side of a business to business leadership. How do you play with those kind of in both of those roles, I guess, on a daily basis?
Well, what I really enjoy is I discovered this when I was relatively young. What I really enjoy is building things. And that can be building a product, but it also, I really enjoy building a company that is delivering a great service, great product, and creating a company that will deliver and continue to deliver that great experience for the customer. And so I translate that, love of creating products into the love of creating a company that can execute.
Gotcha. So let me ask you this part. When you are talking to other folks, or maybe this is an experience that you've dealt with, I don't know, but pivoting off of a failure. So there's a business idea, business concept, and you put all that effort into it and it just isn't there. It's just not working. How do you pivot out of that, or what is the advice that you've given others on adjusting and pivoting out of that failure or that perceived failure?
That's a good question. The general advice that I give to folks is figure out the test and fail fast. Time is a very precious thing. And so you don't want to waste a lot of time on an idea that isn't going to turn into a successful business, because, it's just wasted time and you're not making money and you're not being successful. And so we do this in our marketing and somewhat in our product development and in all aspects of the company. We run basically good old-fashioned scientific experiments. And it's, any experiment is open game, and a failed experiment is okay, provided it doesn't do long-lasting and permanent damage to the company. And so we run a lot of experiments, or mini companies, so to speak. We'll say, okay, we want to try advertising on the Rush Limbaugh show. Okay, let's run those advertisements for a week or a month. Let's measure the results, see how that goes. If that works, okay, then we'll do more. If it doesn't work, then, okay, stop doing it, kill it, and let's move on to the next experiment. And starting a company is very much like that. You need to figure out how you can run an experiment or two to test, are there buyers? Is there a market? Can I put up a website and advertise something and, see if I can get some feedback? And I do a Kickstarter campaign and see how many people are willing to pony up. You want to get feedback about whether what you're trying to make has legs or not as fast as you can.
So just get the ideas out there, test them, test the theory, get the feedback, and then make quick decisions, fail fast, as you say, so that you can move on to the next thing if that just doesn't work.
Correct.
So while you're doing these, testing these new ideas out, obviously team building comes into play of hiring and putting people into specific positions. What are some things that you've learned through that process that you would say, hey, these are some things to be on the lookout for? You should hire faster, or you should hire slower. What is your philosophy on that when you're starting up a new business?
Well, there's some complexity there. A lot of things come into building a team. So the stuff you want to build a team of people that are going to actually like each other. However, that is important, but it's not the only thing, right? You have to have people who have the right skills and the right capabilities to make a functioning team. I find that sometimes people are overly focused on whether they like people or not, versus whether they're the best for the job. And the trick in building a team is you got to hit both of those well. So I often have people who do interviews for me, and they say, "Oh yeah, I interviewed him. I liked him." And I'm like, "Oh, I don't really care right now if you liked him. How good is he going to be at doing the job that needs to be done first? Then we'll decide whether we like him or not." Okay, and can work with him. So there's that. And then I think that entrepreneurs often, very, very often, almost always, make the mistake of keeping people who are not right for the job in the job for too long. In the entrepreneurial world, it's a little harsh you don't have the money or the time or the luxury for having someone in a position that's not the correct position for very long. In corporate America, where you've got a big successful company and you're making lots of money, you can actually afford that for a little while longer. And so the processes that they put in place for moving people out of a company are much longer. In a startup company, I think you got to be slightly harsher and make changes more quickly when you need to make those changes.
So understanding how to build a team, get the right people in that right position that can actually accomplish the task, and then understand when they're not. Don't waste a lot of time on trying to deal with that, because you're again, especially in a startup phase, your time is of the essence.
Yes. And, you have to get successful quickly, because if you're spending money, you're burning money. The burn rate is something that you have to watch very closely. Okay? Very closely. Every dollar needs to be spent as if it was coming out of your personal budget, not out of the budget of the investors or the venture capitalists or whoever's put up the money. You should really think about it as if it's your own money, because in reality it is, even if it's not. Okay. In many cases it is your own money. Okay. But in other cases you may have taken some investors. But the problem is if you spend that money kind of a little loosely, or a little less carefully, the reality is then you need to get more money, and that more money dilutes your ownership. And so that dilution of your ownership is effectively reflected back into you spending that money as if it was your money. And so money and finances are a critical aspect of doing any type of company, whether it be a small business or a venture-funded business. You've got to watch the numbers, and you need to watch the numbers on a weekly, monthly basis. And if you're not able to or willing to do that, you need to have someone on your team who is, and who is very focused on it. And you need to make sure that that person is in tune with you very well, and you need to listen to them. If you're not a numbers person in any way, shape, or form, it is very hard to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah. So if you can't focus on the numbers, and you even in the early stages, it doesn't necessarily make the most sense to have somebody on staff that is focused on that if you're in that early stage of just trying to get things off the ground. Hey, thanks for listening to the Coffee Break Podcast. If this information has been helpful to you, or you just really kind of like our theme song, can you help us out by rating us on whatever app you're using? And if you get really fancy, how about sharing a screenshot on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or LinkedIn? Okay, enough of all this. Let's get back to the conversation. The question that I had for you regarding that was, and it kind of sounds like you were alluding to it a little bit, what are your thoughts on crowdfunding versus angel investing or bootstrapping, or all the other various ways to get capital? What is the? I mean, I would imagine at this phase of your life you have the ability to bootstrap, but what is the process and the advice that you give others as they're going down that path?
I'm a little contrarian. So I've never done a crowdsourced or a Kickstarter kind of campaign to get a company off the ground. I'm intrigued by it. I think it's got a lot of great benefits for the entrepreneur, because you get people pre-buying your product and you don't have to give up ownership in the company, but yet you get funding to go do what you want. There's a bit of pressure, which is good, but could be detrimental if you overpromise and underdeliver. But if you can pull it off, I think it's a great solution, even though I've never done it.
Gotcha.
I have mostly bootstrapped my companies. Barracuda Networks was a bootstrap. Design Acceleration before that was a bootstrap. Eagle Eye Networks is a bootstrap. Drako Motors is a bootstrap. I have raised venture capital 8 or 9 times for some of my companies over time, and it has some benefits. But you give up a lot of ownership and a lot of control, and there's a cost to it. And so I have made more money and had more fun with the bootstrap companies than I have had with the venture funded companies.
Huh. Why do you think that is?
Why do I think that is? I think I've made more money because I've retained a lot more ownership than when using venture capital. And I think I've had more fun because the buck stops with me, and I get to make the decisions more quickly, and the company can move more efficiently because there's fewer people involved in the decision process.
Gotcha. This is one of my favorite questions to ask people. Did you expect to be at this point in your life?
Oh, wow. I don't think I really had any expectations when I was younger. I think I had a lot of ambitions, but I feel very fortunate to have reached the place that I have reached and to have the freedoms that I have. I consider myself one of the luckiest people in the world in that respect.
Well, it's been interesting. It's fun to even to go on the internet and Google search your name. There's a lot of accolades associated with it. Top 100 most influential entrepreneurs. And the list goes on and on. It's been really neat to just.
We recently, Eagle Eye Networks was recently named number 131 in the Deloitte and Touche fastest growing companies in North America just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. It's very exciting to kind of see that and just to kind of be around, or at least an observer in that process. Two kind of final questions as we kind of wrap this thing up. Number one, what are some pieces of advice that you would give? And I know I've asked that kind of question repeatedly through this conversation, but specifically to young business leaders, what are some pieces of advice that you would say, if you don't do anything else but this, what's something that you would give them?
I'm not sure I have if you don't do anything but this advice, but one is, understand your own strengths and weaknesses and be honest about them, and make sure that you hire or partner or get an advisor to fill in for the areas where you are weak. So if you are a good salesperson, you need to have a good tech person, as your sidekick. If you are a good tech person, and not good at sales, you need to have a good salesperson. If you're not good with the numbers, make sure you got somebody who is, on the numbers and is helping you. So just fill in your weaknesses with someone who has that as a very strong area in order to make sure you have all of the functions covered. The second is, I have some Drako principles of entrepreneurship that have been published on the internet here and there. But, one of them is conserve your cash. Cash is king. Conserve every penny you possibly can, because that gives you control and ownership of your destiny. And the longer you can survive, the more likely you are to succeed.
Awesome. Those are good pieces of advice. Understand that it's okay to be self-aware. It's okay to say, I'm not great at this and I need help in this area. I think being around people that have done a good job with that, you see them accelerate a lot faster because versus the people that think that they have to handle everything themselves, they have to touch everything themselves, and they struggle through a lot of those areas because they can't recognize those weaknesses.
Correct.
So the other question that I like to ask a lot of people is about books. It's one of the fundamentals around here is kind of learning and reading and continuing kind of to expand your knowledge. I'm not sure kind of your take on that. If you're a book guy, so wanted to get some recommendations from you if you're to say, hey, here's some things to look out for.
I have a classic book that I ask and try and force every one of my sales guys to read. And it's a little bit of a cliche, but it's the infamous How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Okay.
Which I think is the best book ever written on how to do sales. And it's probably, 80 years old now, but it is really brilliant and still my go-to book for a sales guy.
Awesome. Well, that's a great piece of advice that we can all add to our collection if we haven't done that so far. So thank you very much, Dean, for your time today and all of your insight. I think it's really cool to be able to see all of the businesses that you've been a part of, all the businesses that you've started, and for you to be able to take some time and share some of that insight with us today is very much appreciated.
Thank you, Chad. It's been great talking to you. I always love talking about entrepreneurship and giving a little bit of advice and a little bit of help or whatever I can give to folks who are trying to get out there and create their own business. I'm a very strong supporter of people doing it themselves. I think it's the best thing in the world.
So before we finish up, I did want to ask you about Drako Motors. What's going on with that?
So Drako Motors is we're doing a 4-motor electric car designed for high-end customers who are looking for a car that has kind of very, very high levels of performance, 1,200 horsepower, 206 miles per hour. Limited production. We're only going to make 25 units or so. And it's a beautiful piece of machinery with elegant lines and incredible technology behind it with the 4-motor drive system.
Yeah, it's a beautiful looking car. If you Google that, it looks amazing. Looks very exciting. So that's a really cool venture that you're working on right now. And that is live in production right now.
Correct. Unlike a lot of other electric high performance cars, the Drako Motors car is not a prototype. It is in production and available for orders today. So it is quite a bit further along than the half a dozen cars that it gets compared with, which are not that far along.
There you go. All right. Thank you very much, Dean, for your time today. I'm telling you, it is very exciting to be able to chat with Dean and be able to learn a little bit more about the world of entrepreneurship. So it's really exciting. This is the start of season 3 for us with the podcast, and well, that means that there's 2 other seasons for you to check out. You can find it all at Loc-Doc.net/podcast. You can subscribe there on any of the podcast platforms that you prefer, but you can check it all out. All of season 2, 51 episodes are there for you. And from season 1, there's about 20 episodes for you to check out. So lots of information for you, lots of great guests that you can go and check out. And we invite you to do that. It's all on video as well on Facebook and YouTube. You can find it all there. Just search for the Coffee Break Podcast. But we do ask you to subscribe. If you are on iTunes, we ask you to give us a 5-star review and maybe drop some comments in below and share this on social media and tag us, if you would, at LOCDOCINC. We would love to hear from you and your feedback on today's episode. We'll see you next time on the Coffee Break Podcast.